We'll continue looking at the Burton and King article and the O'Hare and Scher article as examples for our worksheets. If you don't already have those open, please go ahead and open them before you move on. Before we move on to other parts of the article, we also need to consider what we know from the information about the sample. The technical way to think about this is we want to consider limitations to generalizability. That might sound complicated, but the actual idea is probably pretty familiar. Have you ever heard the phrase, that's like comparing apples to oranges? Generalizability asks if we're trying to take data from apples to draw conclusions about oranges, or vice versa. The group we obtain data from is the sample, and the group we're drawing conclusions about is the population. So, generalizability asks, does the sample accurately represent the population it was intended to represent? In some cases, it can be as easy as knowing the apple does not represent the population of chocolate candies. In other cases, though, it might be more tricky. We have to think more about the intended population and the way the research is carried out. Would a bag of peanut butter M&Ms allow us to draw conclusions about all candies with chocolate and peanut flavors? Questions like this are one of the reasons we discourage use of the word prove in APA-style writing in favor of using terms like support, suggest, or indicate. That said, we're interested in whether the sampling method and resulting sample would lead to results that seem to represent the entire population. It helps to remember, too, what the authors are interested in. So, looking across the information we already have in the worksheet for the Burton and King article, we know they were interested in how writing about intensely positive experiences impacted mood and health, and they appeared to be considering people in general. They used a convenient sample of 90 students who used the Student Health Center for Healthcare. The relatively young age of the sample might lead us to question whether the findings would really represent all people because of the question about whether they represent older individuals. It's helpful to make notes about generalizability so that you have that quick reference later. You can include something like I have in this slide in that space on the worksheet. Now I'll pause this recording to look at O'Hare and Scher and complete the generalizability section of the worksheet before you move on. There are a few things that might have stuck out for you. We could question whether students from one school would represent other schools, particularly given the large portion that was middle class. Having a relatively low proportion of women might also make us hesitant about the results related to gender and substance use. The idea about generalizability is not that we would completely discount findings if we're not sure if they represent the population. It just leads us to use those disclaimers of sorts, words like supports, suggests, and indicates, instead of proves or directly causes. The concept of generalizability also brings together several things we've learned about so far and encouraging us to think about the goals and population of interest and how that's reflected in the sample.